Harlem, New York, February 1st, 1951, 11 p.m. The greatest boxer alive slides an envelope across a desk. Inside, a check for $250,000 and a note with 4 words that could end everything: lose in round 10. Sugar Ray Robinson sits across from Bumpy Johnson, hands trembling, eyes hollow. He's undefeated, untouchable, a legend. But tonight, he's terrified. The mob wants him to throw the biggest fight of his career. If he refuses, they'll destroy him, his family, everything. This is the night a champion had to choose between his life and his legacy. But here's what you need to know before we go any further. Hit that subscribe button and drop a like. You're about to hear a story most people don't know. A story about courage, power, and the man who stood between a fighter and the mafia. Let's go back to the beginning. If you weren't around in the 1,950 seconds, let me paint you a picture of who Sugar Ray Robinson was, because calling him just a boxer is like calling the ocean just water. Sugar Ray Robinson wasn't just good. He wasn't just great. He was inevitable. When he stepped into the ring, the outcome wasn't a question, it was a countdown. Fighters didn't wonder if they'd lose. They wondered how badly. By February 1951, Sugar Ray had a record that made grown men nervous. He'd fought over 120 professional bouts and lost maybe once. He moved through weight classes like he owned them. Welterweight champion, middleweight contender, pound for pound, the most dangerous man in the sport. But it wasn't just his record that made him special. It was how he fought. Sugar Ray had speed that didn't make sense. Combinations so fast, referees had to re-watch footage just to count the punches. He had power in both hands, footwork like a dancer, and ring IQ that made veterans look like amateurs. Commentators ran out of words. Opponents ran out of hope. They called him Sugar because his style was sweet, smooth, effortless, beautiful to watch. But don't get it twisted. That sweetness came with venom. He could knock you out cold or pick you apart for 12 rounds. Your choice didn't matter, he decided. And beyond the ring, Sugar Ray was royalty in Harlem. In 1951, black athletes didn't just represent themselves, they represented all of us. Every win was a statement. Every loss, a setback for the community. Sugar Ray carried that weight with grace. He dressed sharp, spoke well, moved with confidence. He owned businesses. He gave back. He was proof that excellence could break barriers. Harlem loved him. America respected him. The world feared him. But here's the thing about being untouchable, it makes you a target. Because while Sugar Ray was dominating the ring, another force was dominating the sport itself. The mob. And in 1951, if you were a big-name fighter, you didn't just answer to your trainer or your promoter. You answered to them. Boxing wasn't clean. It never had been. Fights were fixed. Outcomes were bought. Careers were controlled. And if you didn't play along, you got hurt. Or worse. Sugar Ray knew this. Every fighter did. But he'd managed to stay above it until now. Because on that cold February night, the mob didn't ask. They demanded. And the man making the demand wasn't some low-level enforcer you could brush off. It was Frankie Carbo, the single most powerful fixer in boxing. The man who decided championships, the man who ended careers with a phone call. Carbo wanted Sugar Ray to lose. Not just lose fall in round 10. Make it look good. Take the money. Keep quiet. And if he didn't, well, let's just say the envelope didn't come with a polite please. So Sugar Ray did what any man in his position would do when the walls started closing in. He went to the one person in Harlem who could stand between him and the mob. He went to Bumpy Johnson. Now, you might be wondering, why Bumpy? Why not the police? Why not his promoter? Why not a lawyer? Because in Harlem, when the system couldn't protect you, Bumpy could. And when powerful men tried to break you, Bumpy made sure they broke first. But we'll get to him in a second. Right now, I want you to understand what Sugar Ray was risking by walking into Small's paradise that night. He wasn't just risking a fight. He was risking everything. His reputation, his family, his life. Because once you say no to the mob, there's no going back. Once you choose principle over survival, you better be ready for war. And Sugar Ray? He wasn't a gangster. He wasn't a street guy. He was a fighter. one of the best to ever live. But this wasn't a fight he could win with his fists. This was bigger than the ring. This was about whether a black man in 1951 could stand up to the most powerful criminals in America and walk away whole. Quick question for you. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments. I want to know where this story is reaching. Let's build this community. All right, now that you know who Sugar Ray was, let's talk about the man he turned to for help. The man the mob feared. The man Harlem trusted. Bumpy Johnson. Bumpy Johnson wasn't your typical gangster. He didn't run around waving guns. He didn't need to yell to be heard. He didn't rule through chaos. He ruled through respect. And in Harlem, respect was currency. Born Ellsworth Raymond Johnson in South Carolina, Bumpy came to Harlem as a kid and never left. By the time he was a grown man, he'd become something rare in the underworld, a criminal with a conscience, a gangster with a code. Now, don't get it twisted. Bumpy was not a saint. He ran numbers. He controlled territory. He had muscle, connections, and enough power to make problems disappear. But here's what separated him from everyone else. Bumpy protected Harlem. While other gangsters bled their communities dry, Bumpy invested. He made sure local businesses stayed open. He kept outside crews from moving in. He looked out for people who had no one else looking out for them. And when someone in Harlem needed help, real help, they didn't call the cops. They called Bumpy. That's why Sugar Ray came to him. Because Bumpy wasn't just feared, he was trusted. And in a world where the mob could buy anyone, trust was everything. By 1951, Bumpy had been in the game for decades. He'd done time. He'd survived wars with rival crews. He'd gone toe-to-toe with the Italian mafia and lived to tell about it. His reputation stretched far beyond Harlem into Brooklyn, the Bronx, even downtown Manhattan. People knew you didn't cross Bumpy Johnson unless you were ready to lose. But here's the thing most people didn't understand about him. Bumpy wasn't motivated by greed. He was motivated by principle. He believed in loyalty. He believed in standing up for your people. And he believed that power meant nothing if you didn't use it to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. That's why, when Sugar Ray walked into Small's paradise that night, Bumpy didn't hesitate. He didn't ask, "What's in it for me?" He didn't try to negotiate a cut. He didn't weigh the risks and benefits like some cold-blooded businessman. He saw a man in trouble, a man who'd done right by Harlem, a man who represented something bigger than himself. And Bumpy made a choice. Now, Sugar Ray and Bumpy weren't strangers. They knew each other, respected each other. They moved in the same circles, attended the same spots, understood the same struggles. Sugar Ray was Harlem's champion in the ring. Bumpy was Harlem's protector in the streets. They were cut from the same cloth men who refused to bow. So when Sugar Ray sat down in that back office, hands shaking, voice low, and slid that envelope across the desk, Bumpy didn't flinch. He opened it. Read the note, looked at the check, and then he looked Sugar Ray dead in the eye. "Do you want to throw the fight?" Sugar Ray didn't hesitate. "No." Bumpy nodded. "Then don't." 3 words. That's all it took. Because Bumpy understood something most people didn't fear. Only wins if you let it. The mob was powerful, sure. Frankie Carbo was dangerous, absolutely. But power without principle is just bullying. And Bumpy had spent his entire life standing up to bullies. He wasn't going to stop now. From that moment on, Bumpy made it clear. Sugar Ray Robinson was under his protection, and anyone who wanted to get to Sugar Ray would have to go through him first. Now, you might be thinking, what could one man do against the mob? Even someone as powerful as Bumpy? Here's the thing. Bumpy wasn't just one man. He had a network. He had soldiers. He had influence that stretched into places the mob couldn't touch. And more importantly, he had something Frankie Carbo didn't. He had Harlem. And when Harlem stood behind you, you weren't alone. You were an army. But before we get to the showdown, you need to understand exactly who Bumpy was up against. Because Frankie Carbo wasn't just some mobster. He was the mobster when it came to boxing. The man who controlled champions. The man who decided destinies. Let's talk about him. Frankie Carbo was a ghost. Not literally, but close enough. He didn't do interviews. He didn't pose for pictures. He didn't show up in headlines unless someone got killed. But in the world of boxing, everyone knew his name, and everyone feared it. They called him Mr. Gray, the man in the shadows, the fixer, the kingmaker. If you wanted a title shot in the 1,940 seconds and 50 seconds, you went through Frankie Carbo. If you wanted to keep your career, you did what Frankie Carbo said. And if you crossed him, well, let's just say fighters had a way of disappearing or ending up in the hospital with injuries that had nothing to do with the ring. Carbo wasn't just connected to the mob. He was the mob's boxing operation. He worked with the Lucchese crime family, had ties to Murder, Incorporated, and controlled managers, promoters, and fighters across the country. He didn't own boxing on paper, but he owned it where it mattered. In the backrooms, in the deals, in the threats whispered before fights. And here's the scary part. It worked. Fighters threw fights all the time. Some did it for money. Some did it out of fear. Some did it because they had no choice. Their managers had already made the deal without telling them. By the time they found out, it was too late to say no. The system was rigged from top to bottom. Promoters were in on it. Referees looked the other way. Commissioners got paid off. And if a fighter tried to go public, they'd get blackballed. No more fights. No more paydays. Career over. So most guys just took the money and kept quiet. But Sugar Ray Robinson wasn't most guys. He'd built his career on being untouchable, not just in skill, but in character. He didn't take shortcuts. He didn't play dirty. He fought clean, won clean, and walked away clean. That's what made him a legend. And that's exactly why Carbo wanted to break him. Because if you could control Sugar Ray Robinson, the best fighter in the world, you could control anyone. It would send a message to every other fighter out there. Nobody's too big. Nobody's too clean. Nobody's safe. So Carbo made his move. The envelope, the check, the threat. $250,000 to take a dive in round 10 against Jake LaMotta. Make it look good. Go down clean. Walk away rich. And if Sugar Ray refused, his wife would pay the price. That's the line Carbo crossed. That's the moment this stopped being business and became personal. Because threatening a man's family wasn't strategy, it was terrorism. And in 1951, there was no restraining order that could stop the mob. No police protection that could keep you safe. If they wanted to hurt you, they would. And you'd never see it coming. Sugar Ray knew this. That's why he was terrified. That's why his hands shook when he handed Bumpy that envelope. He wasn't scared of losing the fight. He was scared of losing everything else. Now, let's be clear, Jake LaMotta had no idea about any of this. He was a legitimate contender, a tough, brutal brawler who'd earned his shot. This wasn't about him. This was about Carbo flexing his power, proving he could bend the biggest name in boxing to his will. And for 2 weeks leading up to the fight, it looked like he might succeed. Real quick, what time is it where you are? Seriously, drop it in the comments. I'm curious how many of you are watching this late at night like I'm telling it. All right, back to the story. After Sugar Ray left Bumpy's office that night, the pressure didn't stop. It escalated. Phone calls in the middle of the night. No words, just breathing. Strange cars parked outside Sugar Ray's apartment. Watching, waiting. Men in suits showing up at his gym, standing in the back, arms crossed, staring. The message was clear. We're everywhere. We're watching. You can't run. Sugar Ray tried to train, but his focus was shot. He'd be in the middle of sparring and freeze up, looking over his shoulder. His trainer noticed. His corner noticed. Something was wrong. But Sugar Ray couldn't tell them. Because if word got out that the fight was fixed or that someone tried to fix it, the whole thing would blow up. He'd be dragged into investigations, his name would get dragged through the mud, and the mob would make sure he paid for it. He was trapped. And then they went after his wife. A man approached her outside a grocery store, didn't touch her, didn't threaten her directly, just smiled and said, "Tell your husband we're looking forward to the fight." That was it. That's all it took. When Sugar Ray found out, he nearly broke, because now it wasn't just about him. It was about the person he loved most in the world, and the mob knew it. That's when Bumpy stepped in for real. No more watching from the sidelines. No more quiet protection. Bumpy made a decision that would change everything. He was going to confront Frankie Carbo face to face. And one way or another, this was going to end. Let's go back to that night. February 1st, 1951. Small's Paradise, 11 p.m. If you don't know Small's Paradise, You need to understand it wasn't just a club. It was the club. The heartbeat of Harlem nightlife. Live music, good food, better drinks, and the kind of atmosphere where legends were made. On any given night, you'd see musicians, athletes, businessmen, and street kings all under one roof. And in the back, at his usual table, sat Bumpy Johnson. He wasn't hiding. He never did. Bumpy moved through Harlem like he owned it because in a lot of ways, he did. People nodded as they passed. Some stopped to shake his hand. Others just gave a respectful glance and kept moving. That's the kind of presence he had. So when Sugar Ray Robinson walked through the door that night, Bumpy noticed immediately. Not because Sugar Ray was famous, everyone in Harlem knew him, but because of the way he walked, shoulders tight, eyes down, hands in his pockets. This wasn't the confident, smooth-moving champion the world knew. This was a man carrying fear. Bumpy stood up, smiled, greeted him like family. "Ray, good to see you, champ." Sugar Ray forced a smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Bumpy, you got a minute? For you?" "Always." They moved to the back office. Door closed, music muffled, just the two of them. Sugar Ray sat down across from Bumpy, and for a long moment, he didn't say anything. He just stared at the desk, jaw clenched, breathing heavy. Bumpy didn't rush him. He'd seen this before, men on the edge, trying to find the words. Finally, Sugar Ray spoke. "I'm in trouble." 2 words. That's all it took for Bumpy to know this wasn't about money, wasn't about a business deal gone wrong. This was something else. "Talk to me," Bumpy said, leaning back in his chair, calm as ever. Sugar Ray reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope, slid it across the desk. Bumpy opened it slowly, pulled out the check first, $250,000. His eyebrows raised slightly. That was serious money, life-changing money. Then he unfolded the note. It was short, typed, no signature, just instructions. "Lose to LaMotta in round 10. Make it clean, or your wife pays." Bumpy read it twice. His face didn't change, but his jaw tightened. He set the note down, looked at Sugar Ray, and waited. "They came to me 3 days ago," Sugar Ray said, voice low. "2 guys, didn't say much, just handed me that and walked away. I thought maybe it was a joke, some sick prank. But then the calls started. Then the cars outside my place. Then—" He stopped, swallowed hard. "Then they approached my wife." Bumpy's eyes darkened. "They didn't touch her," Sugar Ray continued quickly, "but they made sure she knew they could. And now I don't know what to do. If I throw the fight, I lose everything I've worked for. If I don't—" He trailed off. Didn't need to finish. Bumpy understood. For a moment, the room was silent except for the faint thump of bass from the club outside. Then Bumpy leaned forward, elbows on the desk, and asked the only question that mattered. "Do you want to throw the fight?" Sugar Ray looked up, met his eyes, and answered without hesitation. "No." Bumpy nodded. "Then don't." Sugar Ray blinked. "Bumpy, you don't understand. This is Frankie Carbo. This is the mob. They don't make empty threats. If I don't do what they say, they'll have to go through me." The words hung in the air, like a promise carved in stone. Sugar Ray stared at him, searching his face for doubt, for hesitation, for any sign that Bumpy didn't fully grasp what he was saying. But there was nothing, just calm, just certainty. "You don't have to do this," Sugar Ray said quietly. "This isn't your fight." "Yes, it is," Bumpy replied. "The moment they threatened you, it became my fight. You're Harlem. And nobody comes into my city and tries to break one of our own." Sugar Ray's throat tightened. He wasn't used to this. He was used to fighting his own battles, standing on his own 2 feet. But this was different. This was bigger than him. "What do I do?" he asked. "You train," Bumpy said simply. "You prepare. You fight like you always do, and you let me handle the rest. And if they come after my wife again?" Bumpy's expression hardened. "They won't." There was no bravado in his voice, no tough guy posturing, just a statement of fact. Because Bumpy Johnson didn't make promises he couldn't keep. Sugar Ray exhaled slowly, some of the weight lifting off his shoulders. Not all of it, but enough to breathe. "Why are you doing this?" he asked. Bumpy leaned back, considered the question. "Because you're doing the right thing. And the right thing shouldn't cost you everything. That's not how this works. Not in my city." He stood up, walked around the desk, and placed a hand on Sugar Ray's shoulder. "You're not alone in this, Ray. You never were." Sugar Ray nodded, stood, shook Bumpy's hand. For the first time that night, he felt something other than fear. He felt hope. As he left the office and walked back through the club, the music seemed a little louder, the lights a little brighter. He still had 2 weeks until the fight. 2 weeks of pressure, threats, and fear. But now he had something the mob didn't expect. He had Bumpy Johnson. And in Harlem, that changed everything. The next 2 weeks were hell. Not the kind of hell you see in movies, loud, dramatic, violent. This was quiet hell. Psychological hell. The kind that creeps into your mind and doesn't let go. Sugar Ray tried to keep his routine. Wake up early, run, train, spar, eat, sleep, repeat. That's what champions do. That's what he'd always done. But now, everything felt different. Every morning when he left his apartment, there was a car parked across the street. Different car each time. Same message. We're watching. Every time his phone rang, his heart jumped. Sometimes it was his trainer. Sometimes his manager. Sometimes nobody. Just silence on the other end. Breathing. Then a click. He'd hang up, hands shaking, and try to convince himself it was nothing. But it wasn't nothing. At the gym, strange men started showing up. They didn't work out, didn't talk to anyone, just stood in the back, arms crossed, watching. His sparring partners noticed, his trainer noticed, but nobody said anything. What could they say? Sugar Ray tried to focus, tried to throw combinations, work the bag, move his feet, but his mind was somewhere else, somewhere dark. What if they hurt her? What if I can't protect her? What if Bumpy can't stop them? The doubt crept in like poison. One afternoon, he was in the middle of sparring when he froze. Just stopped mid-combination, gloves down, staring at the corner of the gym. His sparring partner looked confused. His trainer yelled at him to keep his hands up. But Sugar Ray wasn't there anymore. He was somewhere else, somewhere scared. His trainer pulled him aside after. "Ray, what's going on? You're not yourself." Sugar Ray forced a smile. "I'm fine, just tired." "You're not tired. You're distracted. And distracted fighters get hurt." Sugar Ray nodded, said he'd do better, and went back to training. But the truth was, he didn't know if he could do better. Not with this hanging over him. Meanwhile, Bumpy was moving in the shadows. He didn't tell Sugar Ray everything, didn't need to. But from the moment Sugar Ray left his office that night, Bumpy put his network into motion. He had men stationed outside Sugar Ray's apartment building. Rotating shifts, different faces, blending in. If Carbo's guys were watching, Bumpy's guys were watching them. He had people at the gym. Not obvious, not intrusive, just present. A janitor who wasn't really a janitor. A guy reading a newspaper who never turned the page. Eyes everywhere. He had word sent through the grapevine. "Sugar Ray Robinson is protected. Anyone who touches him answers to me." In Harlem, that message carried weight. But outside Harlem, that was Carbo's territory. And Carbo wasn't backing down. The threats got worse. One night, Sugar Ray came home to find his apartment door slightly open. Not broken, not forced, just unlocked. Like someone had a key, he stepped inside slowly, heart pounding, fists clenched. Nothing was missing, nothing was broken, but something was different. On the kitchen table, there was a newspaper, folded neatly, open to the sports section, and circled in red ink was an article about the upcoming fight. Underneath, someone had written in pen, "Round 10. Don't forget." Sugar Ray's blood ran cold. They'd been inside his home. While he was gone, while his wife was out, they'd walked through his space, touched his things, left a message. He called Bumpy immediately. Bumpy didn't ask questions, just said, "Pack a bag. You and your wife are staying somewhere else tonight." Within an hour, Sugar Ray and his wife were moved to a safe location, one of Bumpy's properties, secure, quiet, guarded. His wife didn't ask many questions. She knew something was wrong, knew her husband was carrying something heavy, but she trusted him, trusted that he'd keep her safe. Sugar Ray wished he felt as confident. That night, lying in bed in a stranger's apartment, Staring at the ceiling, he thought about quitting. Not the fight, everything. Maybe they should just leave. Go to another city. Start over. Disappear. But then he thought about what that would mean. It would mean Carbo won. It would mean Fear won. It would mean every other fighter out there would know. If the mob wants you, you fold. No matter who you are. And Sugar Ray couldn't live with that. So he got up the next morning, laced up his shoes, and went back to training. But the pressure kept building. A week before the fight, one of Bumpy's men reported something that made everyone nervous. Carbo's crew had been asking around. Not about Sugar Ray, about Bumpy. They wanted to know his routines, his spots, his weaknesses. It was a warning shot. A message that said, "You're in this now too." Bumpy didn't flinch. He'd been in worse situations, survived worse enemies. But this was different. This wasn't about territory or money. This was about principle. And principle didn't negotiate. He knew what he had to do. 3 days before the fight, Sugar Ray's wife was walking to the market escorted by 2 of Bumpy's men, just to be safe. She was picking up groceries, trying to keep some sense of normalcy in the chaos. That's when it happened. A man approached her, well-dressed, polite smile, tipped his hat. "Mrs. Robinson," he said smoothly, "just wanted to say we're all looking forward to the fight. Should be a real memorable night." He didn't wait for a response, just turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd. Bumpy's men immediately moved her back to the safe house and reported what happened. When Sugar Ray found out, he nearly lost it. "They got to her again," he said, voice shaking with anger and fear. "Even with your guys there, they still got to her." Bumpy stayed calm. "They didn't touch her. They're just trying to rattle you." "Well, it's working." Bumpy looked him dead in the eye. "That's exactly why I'm ending this. Tonight." Sugar Ray blinked. "What do you mean?" "I mean I'm done playing defense. It's time to go on offense." "Bumpy, you can't just—" "I'm meeting with Carbo, face to face, and this ends one way or another." Sugar Ray felt his stomach drop. "That's suicide." Bumpy smiled, not out of arrogance, but certainty. "No, it's strategy." And with that, Bumpy Johnson set up the meeting that would decide everything. The showdown between Harlem's protector and the mob's most dangerous fixer. No guns, no backup, just 2 men, 2 codes, 2 wills. And only one would walk away in control. The meeting happened in neutral territory. Not Harlem, not Little Italy. Somewhere in between, a quiet restaurant in Midtown Manhattan that closed early for private events. The kind of place where deals got made and secrets stayed buried. Bumpy arrived alone. No bodyguards, no weapons. Just him, a tailored suit, and a reputation that preceded him by miles. Frankie Carbo was already there, sitting at a corner table, back to the wall. 2 of his men stood near the door, not threatening, just present, a reminder of who held the power. Or so they thought. Bumpy walked in like he owned the place. Calm, confident, unbothered. He nodded to Carbo's men as he passed, then sat down across from the fixer without waiting for an invitation. Carbo studied him for a moment, then smiled. Not a friendly smile. The kind of smile a predator gives before it strikes. "Bumpy Johnson," Carbo said, voice smooth as silk. "I've heard a lot about you." "Likewise," Bumpy replied, leaning back in his chair. "So, you wanted to talk. Let's talk." Bumpy didn't waste time with pleasantries. "Sugar Ray Robinson, you're going to leave him alone." Carbo raised an eyebrow, amused. "Is that right?" "That's right." Carbo chuckled, shaking his head. "You got some nerve, I'll give you that. Walking in here, telling me what to do. You know who I am?" "I know exactly who you are," Bumpy said evenly. "And you know who I am. So let's skip the posturing and get to the point." Carbo's smile faded slightly. He leaned forward, elbows on the table. "The point is, I've got a business to run, and Sugar Ray is part of that business. He takes the dive. Everyone makes money. Everyone's happy. Simple. Except he doesn't want to take the dive. Doesn't matter what he wants. This is bigger than him." "No," Bumpy said, his voice dropping lower, colder. "It's not." Carbo's eyes narrowed. "You think you can protect him? You think your little Harlem crew can stand up to what I've got? I think you're smart enough to know that starting a war over one fight isn't worth it." "Who said anything about a war?" Carbo replied, his tone casual but laced with menace. Accidents happen. People get hurt. Careers end. It's just the way things go sometimes. Bumpy didn't blink. And sometimes, people who think they're untouchable find out they're not. The air in the room shifted. Carbo's men tensed. One of them took a step forward, but Carbo raised a hand, stopping him. "You threatening me?" Carbo asked, his voice dangerously quiet. "I'm giving you a choice," Bumpy said. "Walk away from Sugar Ray. Let him fight clean, and we all move on with our lives. And if I don't?" Bumpy leaned forward now, matching Carbo's posture, his eyes locked on the fixers. "Then you lose more than one fight. You lose respect, you lose credibility, and you lose Harlem." Carbo scoffed. "I don't need Harlem." "You need what Harlem represents," Bumpy countered. "You need fighters to believe you're in control. You need managers to fall in line. You need fear to do the work for you. But if word gets out that you tried to fix Sugar Ray Robinson, the cleanest, most respected fighter in the game, and failed, that fear disappears." Carbo's jaw tightened. Bumpy continued, his voice steady, deliberate. "Every fighter you've ever controlled will start asking questions. Every promoter will start wondering if they really need you. And every crew you've ever worked with will see you as weak. Because you couldn't break one man." "You're bluffing," Carbo said. But there was a crack in his confidence now. "Am I?" Bumpy asked. "You think I came here without a plan? You think I don't have people ready to make sure this story gets out? You think the press won't eat this up? Mob fixer tries to rig championship fight fails. That's a headline that sticks." Carbo stared at him, calculating, weighing his options. Bumpy pressed on. "You've built your empire on fear and control. But control only works when people believe in it. The second they don't, it all falls apart. And I promise you, Frankie, if you go after Sugar Ray again, I will make sure everyone knows you lost." The silence stretched between them like a tightrope. Finally, Carbo leaned back, his expression unreadable. "You're putting a lot on the line for one fighter." "I'm putting it on the line for what's right," Bumpy said simply. "And because I can." Carbo studied him for a long moment, then let out a slow breath. "You know, in another life, we could have done business together." "In another life, maybe," Bumpy replied. "But not this one." Carbo nodded slowly, then gestured to his men. They stepped back. The tension eased slightly. "All right," Carbo said finally. "You win this round. Sugar Ray fights clean. No interference. No accidents." Bumpy didn't smile, didn't celebrate, just nodded. "Smart choice. But let me be clear," Carbo added, his voice hardening again. "This doesn't mean we're friends. This doesn't mean I owe you anything. And if you ever step into my world again, we won't be having a conversation." "Fair enough," Bumpy said, standing up. "As long as you stay out of mine." He turned and walked toward the door, his footsteps echoing in the quiet restaurant. Carbo's men parted to let him through. Just before he left, Bumpy paused, looked back over his shoulder. "One more thing," he said. "If anything, and I mean anything, happens to Sugar Ray or his wife after tonight, I don't care where you are. I don't care who's protecting you. I will find you. And you won't see me coming." Carbo didn't respond. Didn't need to. The message was clear. Bumpy walked out into the night, the cold February air hitting his face. He took a deep breath, let it out slowly. It was done. Sugar Ray was free. "Quick question, what's the weather like where you are today? Sunny? Rainy? Snowing? Drop it in the comments. Let's see where everyone's tuning in from." Now, all that was left was the fight itself. February 14th, 1951. Madison Square Garden. The night the world would find out if a champion could stand on principle and still win. Madison Square Garden was electric. February 14th, 1951. Valentine's Day. But nobody in that arena was thinking about romance. They were thinking about violence, about glory, about two of the toughest fighters in the world going to war. Sugar Ray Robinson versus Jake LaMotta. The rematch everyone had been waiting for. The place was packed, 18,000 people crammed into every seat, standing in the aisles, pressed against the walls. Celebrities in the front rows, gamblers in the back, reporters with notebooks and cameras. The air thick with cigar smoke, sweat, and anticipation. This wasn't just a fight. This was an event. But while the crowd buzzed with excitement, Sugar Ray sat alone in his dressing room, hands wrapped, gloves on, staring at the floor. His trainer was talking something about strategy, about keeping his jab sharp, about not letting LaMotta bully him inside. But Sugar Ray wasn't really listening. His mind was somewhere else. He thought about the envelope, the threats, the fear that had followed him for 2 weeks like a shadow. He thought about his wife, safe now, but still shaken. He thought about Bumpy, who'd put everything on the line to protect him. And he thought about round 10. The round where he was supposed to fall. The round where he was supposed to betray everything he'd ever stood for. But that wasn't happening. Not tonight. Not ever. A knock on the door snapped him out of his thoughts. One of Bumpy's men stepped inside, nodded respectfully. "Bumpy wanted me to tell you everything's clear. No problems. You're good to go." Sugar Ray exhaled, some of the tension leaving his shoulders. He nodded. "Thank you." The man left. Sugar Ray stood up, rolled his shoulders, bounced on his toes. His trainer clapped him on the back. "You ready, champ?" Sugar Ray looked at him, and for the first time in 2 weeks, he smiled. A real smile. "Yeah, I'm ready." The walk to the ring felt like a mile. The crowd roared as Sugar Ray emerged from the tunnel, spotlight following him, his robe shimmering under the lights. He moved with purpose now. No hesitation, no fear, just focus. Across the ring, Jake LaMotta was already waiting. The Bronx Bull, tough as nails, a brawler who didn't know how to quit. He stared at Sugar Ray with that familiar intensity, hungry, dangerous, ready. LaMotta had no idea what Sugar Ray had been through. No idea about the threats, the pressure, the mob. To him, this was just another fight. Another chance to prove he belonged at the top. And that's exactly how Sugar Ray wanted it. The referee called them to the center of the ring, gave the instructions, touched gloves. The crowd quieted for just a moment, that brief, sacred silence before the storm. Then the bell rang, and everything else disappeared. Round 1 was feeling out, both fighters testing distance, timing, respect. Sugar Ray moved beautifully, smooth footwork, sharp jab, staying just out of range. LaMotta pressed forward, head down, looking to get inside and do damage. Round 2, the pace picked up. Sugar Ray started landing combinations quick, clean, precise. LaMotta ate them and kept coming. That's what he did. He was a tank. You couldn't stop him. You could only survive him. By round 3, the fight found its rhythm. Sugar Ray boxing, LaMotta brawling, speed versus power, skill versus will. The crowd was on its feet. Round 4, round 5, round 6. Sugar Ray was winning on points, but LaMotta was relentless. Every time Sugar Ray thought he had space, LaMotta closed it. Every time he tried to breathe, LaMotta was there, throwing hooks to the body, trying to break him down. But Sugar Ray didn't break. Round 7. Round 8. The fight intensified. Sugar Ray's combinations got sharper. His confidence grew. He was in control now, moving, countering, making LaMotta miss and pay for it. But in the back of his mind, he knew what was coming. Round 10. The round where he was supposed to go down. The round Carbo had demanded. The round that would have made him rich and destroyed his soul. The bell rang for round 9. Sugar Ray came out aggressive. He wasn't waiting anymore, wasn't playing it safe. He started unloading hooks, uppercuts, combinations that snapped LaMotta's head back. The crowd roared louder. LaMotta tried to fight back, but he was hurt now. His legs weren't as steady. His punches weren't as sharp. Sugar Ray smelled blood. The bell rang. Round 9 over. One more round. Sugar Ray walked back to his corner, breathing hard but steady. His trainer wiped his face, gave him water, shouted encouragement. But Sugar Ray wasn't listening. He was looking across the ring at LaMotta, battered but still standing, still dangerous. And then he looked up into the crowd. Somewhere out there, Bumpy was watching. Somewhere out there, his wife was watching. Somewhere out there, Harlem was watching. And somewhere out there, Frankie Carbo was watching too. The bell rang for round 10. Sugar Ray walked to the center of the ring. LaMotta came forward, slower now, but still swinging, still fighting. And Sugar Ray met him head on. He didn't hold back, didn't hesitate, didn't think about the threats or the money or the fear. He just fought. Jab, cross, hook, uppercut. Combinations so fast the crowd could barely keep up. LaMotta tried to cover up, tried to fire back, but Sugar Ray was everywhere. Relentless, unstoppable. LaMotta stumbled backward into the ropes. The referee moved in, watching closely. Sugar Ray kept punching. Left, right, left, right. LaMotta's legs buckled. The referee jumped in, waving his arms. Fight over. TKO. Round 13. Wait, no. This was round 10. The round Sugar Ray was supposed to lose. But he didn't lose. He won. The crowd exploded. Cheers so loud they shook the building. Sugar Ray raised his gloves, exhausted, relieved, victorious. He'd done it. He'd fought clean. He'd stood his ground. And he'd won. Before we go any further, if this story is hitting you the way it's hitting me, do me a favor. Hit that like button. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And drop a comment telling me what you think so far. Seriously, let's build this together. As Sugar Ray left the ring, his trainer hugging him, reporters swarming, cameras flashing, he felt something he hadn't felt in weeks. Peace. Not because the fight was over, but because he'd stayed true to himself. He'd refused to be bought, refused to be broken. And he'd proven that integrity could still win. Later that night, back in Harlem, Bumpy Johnson sat in Small's paradise, drink in hand, listening to the radio broadcast, recap the fight. When they announced Sugar Ray's victory, Bumpy smiled. Not a big smile, just a small, satisfied one, because he knew what that victory really meant. It meant the mob didn't always win. It meant fear didn't always control the outcome. It meant one man, standing on principle, could change everything. And in a world that often felt rigged, that mattered more than any title. Sugar Ray Robinson had won the fight. But Bumpy Johnson had won something bigger. He'd won the war. The morning after the fight, Harlem woke up different. Not physically. The streets looked the same. The buildings, the shops, the people going about their business all the same. But there was something in the air, something you could feel but couldn't quite name. Pride. Word had spread fast. Sugar Ray Robinson had won. Clean, no dive, no fix, no surrender. And everyone knew what that meant. It meant the mob had tried and failed. In barbershops and diners, on street corners and stoops, people talked about it. Not just the fight itself, but what it represented. A black man standing up to the most powerful criminals in America and walking away whole. That didn't happen often. Not in 1951. For Frankie Carbo, the loss was more than financial. It was reputational. He'd made a demand publicly, within the circles that mattered, and it hadn't been met. Worse, it had been defied. And not by some nobody he could erase quietly. By Sugar Ray Robinson, the biggest name in boxing. Fighters started whispering. Managers started questioning. The fear that Carbo had built his empire on began to crack. He was still powerful, still dangerous, still connected. But the illusion of total control? That was gone. And in the underworld, perception is everything. Carbo never went after Sugar Ray again. Never made another threat. Never sent another envelope. Because Bumpy had been right, starting a war over one fight wasn't worth it. Especially when losing that war would cost him more than he could afford. So he moved on, found other fighters, other fixes, other ways to maintain his grip, but he never forgot. And neither did Bumpy. For Bumpy Johnson, the victory wasn't about pride or reputation. It was about principle. He'd stood up for someone who couldn't stand up alone. He'd used his power to protect, not exploit. And in doing so, he'd reminded Harlem and himself what power was really for. Not control, not fear, but protection. In the weeks that followed, Bumpy's legend grew. People who'd only heard his name now understood what it meant. He wasn't just a gangster, he was a guardian, a man who drew lines and held them. And when you crossed those lines, you answered to him. Sugar Ray's career didn't just survive, it thrived. He went on to win the middleweight championship later that year, defended it multiple times, became one of the greatest fighters in history. His name became synonymous with excellence, skill, and integrity. But he never forgot what almost happened. Never forgot the fear, the pressure, the moment he almost lost everything. And he never forgot the man who stood beside him when no one else could. Years later, when people asked Sugar Ray about his toughest fight, he'd sometimes talk about LaMotta, sometimes about other legendary bouts. But those closest to him knew the real answer. The toughest fight wasn't in the ring. It was the 2 weeks leading up to it. The fight against fear, against corruption, against a system designed to break him. And he won that fight because he wasn't alone. The bond between Sugar Ray and Bumpy deepened after that night. It wasn't loud, wasn't publicized, but it was real. They'd see each other around Harlem, nod, shake hands, share a drink at Small's Paradise, and in those quiet moments there was an understanding that didn't need words. I had your back. You had mine. That's what matters. For the broader community, the story became legend. It was told in barbershops and passed down through generations. The night Sugar Ray Robinson refused to be bought. The night Bumpy Johnson stood up to the mob. The night integrity won. It became a reminder that even in a world rigged against you, even when the odds are impossible, even when fear tries to control you, you still have a choice. You can fold, or you can stand, and sometimes, if you're lucky, someone will stand with you. That's what made this story more than just a fight, more than just a moment. It became a symbol of resistance, of courage, of what's possible when people refuse to accept the way things are and fight for the way things should be. In 1951, that meant everything, and honestly, it still does, because the world hasn't changed as much as we'd like to think. Corruption still exists, power still tries to control, fear still tries to win. But so does integrity, so does courage, so do people willing to stand up and say, "Not today." That's the legacy of February 14th, 1951. Not just a fight, not just a victory, a statement. When the mob tried to buy a champion's soul, a gangster named Bumpy Johnson made sure it stayed priceless. And that's a story worth remembering. So why does this story still matter? Why are we talking about something that happened over 70 years ago? Why does a fight from 1951 still resonate today? Because the core of this story, the choice between integrity and survival, is timeless. Sugar Ray Robinson wasn't just fighting Jake LaMotta that night. He was fighting a system that told him his principles didn't matter, that money and power were all that counted, that he should just take the deal, keep his head down, and survive. Sound familiar? We see it today. In sports, in business, in politics, in everyday life, people get pressured to compromise, to cut corners, to do what's smart instead of what's right. And most of the time, they fold. Not because they're weak, but because the cost of standing up feels too high. That's what makes Sugar Ray's choice so powerful. He had everything to lose. His career, his family, his life. The smart move, the safe move, was to take the money and throw the fight. Nobody would have blamed him. Most people wouldn't have even known. But he said no. Not because it was easy. Not because he wasn't scared. But because some things are worth more than safety. And Bumpy? Bumpy didn't have to get involved. This wasn't his fight. Wasn't his problem. He could have told Sugar Ray, "Sorry, can't help you," and gone back to his business. But he didn't. He stood up, put his reputation on the line, risked a war with the mob, all because he believed in doing what was right. That's rare. Then and now. In today's world, we're obsessed with winners, with success, with people who make it no matter what. But we don't talk enough about how they make it, about what they're willing to sacrifice or refuse to sacrifice along the way. Sugar Ray Robinson made it to the top without selling his soul. And that's the part of his legacy that matters most. It's easy to win when you're willing to cheat. It's easy to succeed when you're willing to compromise your values. But winning clean, succeeding with integrity, that's hard. That takes courage, and it's exactly what the world needs more of. Now, let's be real, Bumpy Johnson wasn't a saint. He was a gangster. He broke laws. He operated outside the system. But even within that world, he had a code. He had lines he wouldn't cross. And when it mattered, he chose principle over profit. That's the complexity of this story. It's not black and white. It's not good guys versus bad guys. It's real people making real choices in impossible situations. And that's what makes it so powerful, because most of us will never face the mob. We'll never be threatened over a championship fight. But we will face moments where we have to choose between what's easy and what's right. between staying silent and speaking up, between going along and standing firm, between protecting ourselves and protecting others. And in those moments, stories like this one remind us what's possible. They remind us that integrity isn't just some abstract concept. It's a choice, a daily, difficult, dangerous choice. But it's one worth making. Because at the end of the day, your legacy isn't just what you accomplished. It's how you accomplished it. It's what you stood for, what you refused to compromise on, what you were willing to fight for even when the odds were against you. Sugar Ray Robinson could have been remembered as a great fighter who threw one fight. Instead, he's remembered as one of the greatest fighters who never compromised. Bumpy Johnson could have been remembered as just another gangster. Instead, he's remembered as the man who stood between a champion and the mob and won. That's legacy. That's what lasts. So the next time you're faced with a choice between doing what's easy and doing what's right, remember this story. Remember the night a champion refused to be bought. Remember the gangster who made sure his soul stayed priceless. And remember that integrity, even when it's hard, even when it's dangerous, even when it costs you everything, is always worth it. All right, we've reached the end. But before you go, subscribe if you haven't already. Hit that like button, drop a comment, and let me know what you thought of this story. And share it with someone who needs to hear it. Because stories like this, they're meant to be passed on. I'm Bumpy Flame YT, and I'll see you in the next one.